So I/O controllers allow peripherals to be connected to the CPU. So peripherals can be things like your hard drive is actually peripheral that lots of people don't realize. Hard drive's peripheral, your keyboard, your mouse, if you want speakers, microphone, monitor, anything that is plugged that is not directly connected to the CPU is known as a peripheral. So your you need an I/O controller for every one of these. So it's really important to understand not the fact the I/O controllers exist, is to understand why. So your CPU isn't designed to work with and understand every device that could ever be created. That would just be impossible. And obviously, then you'd never be, even if it was work like that, you'd never be able to plug in a device that was developed after your computer was. So that just won't work. So what happens is your computer obviously works in a certain way. It communicates at a certain speed with a certain instruction set, etc. What happens is your device will communicate not to your CPU, it communicates to the I/O controller, and the I/O controller will then communicate to your CPU. So the I/O controller is like the translator. So imagine if I was talking to somebody from France. I can't speak French. Let's say they can't speak English. So the I/O controllers are like the interpreter. So I will talk in what I can talk in. The interpreter will translate into the form they need and pass it on. That's what your I/O controller does. So the first bullet point, every device requires its own controller. It's important to know that. So there are lots of I/O controllers in your computer that are generic, so they will be taken up as devices are plugged in. There's a set I/O controller for your keyboard, your mouse, your monitor, your hard drive. So controllers, second bullet point, controllers consist of circuitry which handles the data flow between the processor and the device. That's things like ensuring it's in the right format, in the right speed, just so it's ready for your CPU to understand. Third bullet point, it will translate signals from the device into the format required by the processor. So if your device is talking in a way that your processor can't understand, which they typically will, the I/O controller is responsible for doing any translations that are needed. And final bullet, and these go, just to note, these go both ways as well. So this is if there's communication that needs to go back to the device, it will work in the same way. And the final bullet point is it buffers data sent to the processor. So typically the devices you plug in are a lot slower than your processor. So instead of the processor having to slow down, because you can understand that's a bit of a waste of time, so the processor won't slow down the speed in which it works to be in sync with the device. So what happens is the I/O controller will buffer the data coming from the device until it's got enough to send it to the CPU, so it's not wasting CPU time. So it will have a little bit of memory in there to buffer instructions that are coming from the device, and then it will translate them if needed and send them on to the CPU, so the CPU can continue to work at its normal speed, which is very often 99% of the time faster than the device that is being plugged in. And that's it. That's an I/O controller, and there's quite a few of them inside your computer, and they're really essential for your CPU to be able to work with peripherals, which are these external devices that are going to be plugged in.